So I am a techno-optimist. I'm optimistic about the future because these exponential technologies that we're enabling us to do extraordinary things together are accelerating and really empowering individuals to solve problems. So instead of the government or large corporations being the only entities that can solve large problems at scale, it's empowering individuals now.
I'm definitely a techno-optimist. I feel like we're in this moment in time where the things that are available to us are enhancing our lives in a terrific way. I mean, just as an example, we've all got this rectangle in our pockets that has the entirety of humankind's knowledge. That makes a big difference. I have 2 kids, and instead of just skateboarding around or playing stickball in the streets like I did in my childhood, they're able to actually obtain any knowledge that they want to whenever they want to.
So I'm an optimist. I think the word techno-optimist has some negative connotations. It has the connotations that technology will solve everything without any need for policy or work on society and so on. So I'm definitely optimistic about the power of technology. I think it's a huge force, but that technology has to be paired with changes in policy, investments in socially important causes, and so on.
Very much so. I do. I am an eternal optimist. I think technology is a huge amplifier for what we do. And if you look at some of the challenges that face us over the coming years and decades, especially around food and water, energy, climate challenges, acidification of the oceans, and so on and so forth, technology is really one of the few tools that we have to, frankly, tackle some of those issues. And history is a great indicator of how technology has helped make our lives better. Human lifespan has doubled over the last couple of hundred years. Medicine is better. Access to education, access to information, largely in part because of the internet.
I've been accused of being an optimist, and being an entrepreneur, I think you have to be optimistic. And optimism is not an idle prediction about the future. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And you have to be optimistic, certainly about your own ventures, or you'd never start anything. I have written extensively about the downsides, in fact, probably more than most, or anyone. I wrote a lot about the downsides in The Age of Spiritual Machines in 1999. That was the basis of Bill Joy's article, Why the Future Doesn't Need Us, which was quite pessimistic. I do come out on the optimistic side, but it's not an idle optimism that ignores the dangers. But people quickly forget what life was like. I mean, people forget what life was like 6, 7 years ago before smartphones really did anything, or before there were social networks, or 15 years ago before there were search engines. That sounds like, imagine life without search engines and without Wikipedia and all of these information resources we have. It sounds like ancient history. That was only a few years ago.
I mean, for me, it's kind of crazy to not see the evidence for the extraordinary technologies that are coming online. And these technologies aren't in a vacuum. They are building on each other, right? The ability for these devices to give people access to the world's information at faster and faster speeds, where AI is going as an enabling tool, the manufacturing base is transforming itself. I mean, the details and the data is pretty evident. We see these continuing trends of increasing literacy, increasing health, increasing access to energy. The cost of energy is rapidly, demonetizing as we are increasing exponentially the amount of solar and wind that we're producing. So the evidence is blatant and obvious and continuous.
If you go back a couple of centuries, life expectancy was 37. There was no understanding of the germ theory of disease, so people constantly got bacterial infections, and there were no antibiotics. And life expectancy was 37, but Mozart and Schubert died in their 30s, and that was typical. Life was extremely harsh and difficult, extremely labor-intensive, great deal of suffering. People are not aware of the progress we're making. Our information about what's wrong with the world is getting exponentially better, so people hear more and more about all the problems and violence and deprivation. And the reality is life is getting dramatically better. There was a poll of about 36,000 people taken in 24 countries asking, has poverty in the world gotten better or worse? 90% approximately said inaccurately that poverty is getting worse. Only 1% said accurately that poverty has declined by 50% in the last 20 years. We're getting wealthier, life expectancies are extending.
So, listen, as a human being, the 100 billion neurons in our brain, the 100 trillion synaptic connections in our brain evolved hundreds of thousands and millions of years ago. And back then, the world was local and linear. And we evolved to exist in a local and linear world, as opposed to this global and exponential world we're in. So we don't really, I'll use a sort of a Heinlein word, we don't grok exponentials well. And because of that, we do forget that the past was, life was short and brutish and very hard. And we had huge swaths of the population dying from warfare or pestilence or starvation that today we have totally forgotten. And we are living in a world where that level of decimation is rare and in between. And so we take for granted the world we're living in, where you can know anything, anytime, talk to anybody at any time, have access to water and clean energy for most of this planet, and getting there more and more for the rest of the planet.
So I'm an optimist on energy. So I speak and write a lot about what's happening in clean energy. And what gives me hope is the incredible pace of technological innovation that is making clean energy cheaper and cheaper. Because ultimately, if you have a clean energy source that's cheaper than the dirty one, the clean energy one will win. So over the course of my lifetime, the cost of solar panels has dropped by a factor of 250. Over just the last 10 years in the US, the cost of solar power has dropped by a factor of 5, which is incredible. So now in Tucson, Arizona, you have solar power that's cheaper than coal and natural gas. In Mexico, you have solar power is the cheapest power there is. In Dubai, in the Middle East, you have solar is the cheapest power there is. Wind power is coming down, not quite as fast, but it's already quite cheap. Electric vehicles are plunging in price. The Tesla Roadster was a $250,000 vehicle. The Model 3 is a $35,000 vehicle. And we're going to have cheaper vehicles than that. So I see that we can replace fossil fuel energy that causes climate change and air pollution with clean energy. Now, will it happen fast enough? Nobody knows. And it looks like, we should be moving much faster than we are. So I don't want to convey a sense of passivity or a Pollyanna-ish view that it'll all be okay. No, we'd rather be done with the transition today. We've already taken enough damage. But fundamentally, I think it is possible, and we will turn the corner.
Well, I think it's a unique time in medical history because we have the potential to really rethink and reframe many elements of healthcare, which is really much more sick care. In the US and most of the world, we wait for disease to happen. We're in a world of habits and diets and others that lead to disease, as opposed to being smart on personalized prevention. We have a lot more data that's becoming available at an exponential rate, whether it's your genome for $1,000 today, or $100 or $10 in 5 years, to your digital health exhaust, whether it's from your Fitbit or your connected home. We can connect the dots now through the world of digital, connected, and mobile health. And I think the potential is to move from the sort of sick care era, where we wait and spend 80% of our dollars on folks who already have advanced disease, to put a lens on integrating information, making you as an individual more empowered to own your healthcare data, to let that information flow, to enable you or your healthcare team to be more proactive, to not wait for disease to happen, but to head it off at the pass, or identify whether it's genetic, behavioral, environmental, other risks, and modify them in smart ways early. And that can go from the individual level to population health to global health. So it's an exciting time now where we have new tools at our disposal. Like, we're only 100 years, well, it's been less than 100 years since we had penicillin. We've only had mobile smartphones, which are really medical devices in our pockets, for 10 years, and medical apps. We're only 6 years into Fitbits and wearable devices. So we have a lot of pieces that are starting to converge and can enable us to do a better job at managing prevention, diagnostics, therapy, clinical trials. But we still need to align a lot of these new technologies with the incentives, with the way we pay for things, with the way we regulate things. There's a lot of barriers, even though a lot of these great technologies and some of the solutions exist already. They're not yet democratized around the world. Or sometimes things that could be wonderful aren't going to happen here in the US. They may jump and happen in Africa or Asia, or places where there's very little medical access or care. So lots of opportunity to address big challenges now with technology.
There's a phenomenon that people are not aware of, which is the exponential progression of information technology outside of these devices we carry around. For example, health and medicine is going to be transformed by biotechnology, which is applying the exponential progression of information technology to biology. The enabling factor for that was the Genome Project. That was a perfect exponential, and that's now beginning to influence clinical practice. We're starting to see profound new therapies created by reprogramming the outdated software of life. And that's a completely different methodology than health and medicine has used in the past. Health and medicine has basically been hit or miss. We kind of find things that happen to work. We didn't have the means of really reprogramming the software of life. That is now becoming a reality, and that's an exponential progression. These technologies are now 1,000 times more powerful than they were when the Genome Project was completed a decade ago, or more than a decade ago. They'll be another 1,000 times more powerful in 10 years. It's going to profoundly transform health and medicine. But people use the linear models of the past that, yes, we've been making slow linear progress because of the methodology we used was hit or miss. It's completely changing now. Exponentials look like nothing is happening. It's very slow. And then when you reach the knee of the curve, they kind of take off. We're just approaching that now in health and medicine. So looking at the sort of linear progression of, say, life expectancy over the last century is not a good indicator of what's going to happen, because we have this exponential progression that's about to descend on us, and it's going to be a tsunami of innovations in health and medicine. And I call that the second bridge. The third bridge is nanotechnology, where we'll go beyond the limitations of biology. The quintessential application there is medical nanorobots that will extend our immune system. Our immune system evolved 50,000 years ago when conditions were very different. It was not in the interest of the human species for us to live very long. Life expectancy was 19 1,000 years ago. So our T cells don't go after things that get us later on in life, like cancer. It thinks, oh, that's me, and doesn't treat it as a pathogen. It doesn't work on retroviruses, doesn't work on prions. We can create a medical nanorobot that goes against all pathogens. Also fixes problems with organs. Lots of diseases are metabolic diseases with a malfunction of our organs. I mean, what do all these organs do anyway? They basically put things in the bloodstream and they take things out. The lungs put in oxygen, take out carbon dioxide. The kidneys take out toxins. The entire digestive tract puts in nutrients. All these different hormonal organs, like the pancreas, put out hormones like insulin. Lots of diseases have to do with malfunctions in those processes. Another function of these medical nanorobots can be to monitor the bloodstream for optimal levels of all these substances and puts them in, takes them out, augment, even replace the function of all the organs. There's actually a very detailed scenario and designs for how to overcome every disease and aging process once we have the enabling factor of these medical nanorobots. And we know exactly how to create the medical nanorobots if we have the enabling factor of being able to do atomically precise manufacturing. That's coming. We'll have that by, well, I've been saying the early 2030s. That's increasingly looking conservative. We may have it in the 2020s. But that's the third bridge. The second bridge is basically just reprogramming our biology by turning genes on, turning them off, reprogramming stem cells to, for example, grow new organs. That's actually being done now successfully in animals. I'm involved with a company where we're growing lungs, kidneys, and hearts and installing them in animals. That's coming to a human near you. So there's going to be very profound transformations. That's just medicine. 3D printing is going to print out all the physical things we need. We'll be able to create food very inexpensively, very high quality without chemicals, using AI-controlled vertical agriculture. And there's revolutions coming in every industry. We ultimately will be able to provide the physical needs of human life for everyone at very low cost.
I don't share the fears about the rise of strong AI, at least at the moment, because what artificial neural networks are very good at doing is categorization, is figuring out, okay, is this a dog picture or a cat picture? You can do things that are superhuman performance in that way. But that's very different than the things that a 2-year-old can do. Navigating a complex room, socially getting what she wants, social manipulation, thinking through all of the things that would have to be done in order to get what she needs. There are just a million things that humans do that we're not even scratching the surface of yet in terms of artificial neural networks. So the idea that we would ever have a neural network that decides that it wants to take over the world or something seems very fantastical to me. It's not even, we don't have networks that have meaningful desires. And then of course there's the issue that, evolutionarily we've had many millions of years that have programmed us with very strong drives for survival, for example. And AI systems simply don't have that. These movies where the AI system wants to survive and not get killed and they'll do anything to stay alive and whatever, it doesn't even make sense because they're not equipped with the same drives that we have.
Not at all. In fact, I'm incredibly optimistic. I think Hollywood in large part has shaped our beliefs. And there's sort of a couple of schools of thought that I think Hollywood has helped sort of push. One is sort of the Terminator scenario, which is machines will take over, they will dominate humans, that type of thing. There's another sort of belief, which is more of a nice coexistence with technology. So the Star Trek world, and you think of like Data as an android in Star Trek where we coexist. But I do think that, and I've been saying this for years now, that I do think there's an element of technology and biology that will merge. I don't think it will become a them versus us. I think it will become a us, in that we sort of merge with technology in some ways. And for those that are skeptical, we're doing it already. I mean, if you think about it, it's not that uncommon to have technology placed in your body, perhaps to help with an ailing heart, perhaps it's to restore sight to someone who's blind, perhaps it's a artificial cochlear so that someone born deaf can now hear again. We're doing it already, and we're in the early stages, but it's a early indicator of how technology and biology will ultimately merge. I don't believe that machines are have a mindset to take over. I think that's completely, frankly, it's unjustified. There's zero evidence to support that. That's the stuff of Hollywood.
Well, I think they're kind of behind the curve in terms of considering the impact. I mean, I talked about both the promise and the peril. It's now almost 20 years ago. And I think you go through 3 phases in considering strong AI or any of these dramatic new information technologies as they get to be very powerful. One is delight at the opportunity to overcome age-old afflictions and problems of humanity, then alarm that, whoa, these things could be dangerous. Biotechnology, for example, is reprogramming our biology to overcome disease, but it could also be used by a bioterrorist to create a new killer virus. So then the third, I think, final phase is to realize we've always had promise and peril with technology. Fire was great, kept us warm, cooked our food for the first time, but also burned down our villages, but we managed to live with it. And overall, technology has provided a far better quality of life than humanity has ever had, and that's a continuing process. And we have, in fact, a moral imperative to continue on this path because there's still a lot of suffering in the world, and only technology is going to overcome it. We have to reap the promise while controlling the peril. I think the concerns are valid. I mean, I don't dismiss them. But the kind of dangers we've seen in futurist AI dystopian movies, where it's the AI versus a brave band of humans for control of humanity, is not realistic. The idea that we're merging with AI is not some concept in the future. It's happening now. You know, when I say that your smartphone is an extension of you and that you can't do your work without it, and if you leave it at home, you can't really function fully intelligently, people really accept that today. Even just a few years ago, that did not seem realistic. That seemed like a very futuristic concept. It's already happened. We're already dependent on this technology. Nobody can do their work or get their education without these brain extenders we have now. And we're much more intimate with them. We do all kinds of intimate work on them, and we carry them in our pockets. When I was a student at MIT, I had to take my bicycle to get to the one computer on campus. And they're going to go inside our bodies and brains. I mean, I actually swallowed a computer a few weeks ago that went through my body and did some diagnostic work. It came out good. That we're going to increasingly merge with these technologies. They will go inside our brains. They'll connect our brain to the cloud. We'll have direct connection, and not just to do things like search and translate, but to actually extend the power of our thinking and give us more neocortical modules and more hierarchy to our neocortex, which will make us smarter. We got more neocortex 2 million years ago when we got these big foreheads. That was enough. It was a one-shot increase in our neocortex, but that was enough to enable us to create language and art and music. Every human culture we've ever discovered has music. No other primate has music because they don't have this additional neocortex we got 2 million years ago. We're going to do it again by connecting our neocortex to the cloud, to synthetic neocortex in the cloud, and basically get, again, more neocortex, and that will be an enabling factor to create more profound music, to be funnier, to be more artistic, to basically enhance the qualities of humanity that we value.